everybody. My name's Hayley. I lead the membership services team at the FMB, and I'm here today with Maria Coulter, who's the construction coach who has delivered now 2 business coaching programs for FMB members for us, with very successfully too. And I think some of you have been on those programs, so you might already know Maria. I'm not sure who has and who hasn't. We are expecting more people to join, but it is after 4:30, so we'll just make a start now, and then people can join as we go through. It's a bit different this session, so if you've been to an FMB webinar before, you'll know we normally have a speaker with some slides, and people, members in the audience, can ask a question by typing the question in the little box at the bottom. But today we wanted to make the session a bit more interactive. So that means that you will be able to speak and contribute your thoughts about the discussion as we go through the session if you want to. So I would ask, if you keep your microphone on mute when you're not speaking, then that removes any possibility of background noise or interference or anything like that. And if you want to make a contribution to the discussion, if you hover your mouse at the bottom of the screen, you'll see there's a little heart symbol that says react, and if you click in there, there's an option to raise your hand so that you can speak, or share any other little emojis with us if you want to, like a thumbs up or a crying emoji or whatever it might be appropriate. Yeah, you should have had a notification at the beginning of the session that we will be recording the session to share with members who couldn't make it today. So hopefully you've ticked that box to say you're okay with that. If not, you can just keep your camera and your microphone off if you don't want to be part of that, but otherwise we'll assume that that's fine. And we'll send you a follow-up email after the session with a summary of what's been discussed, a link to the recording, and if we talk about any FMB resources or helpline numbers or anything like that, we'll add those into the follow-up email as well. So the reason we wanted to do this webinar is because we hear from members quite often in the membership team when we're speaking to members on the phone that they are increasingly finding that it's sometimes difficult to get payments out of their clients, particularly final payments. And we know that that can be a real problem for our members in terms of affecting their profitability, and even can be enough to drive a business out of business ultimately as well. So that's obviously a really serious problem. And we know that the advisors on our legal helpline have said that they are hearing increasingly from members that this is becoming more of a problem than it used to be as well. And we do have some resources and ways that we can help, and we'll talk about those as we go through the session. So I think that's everything that I need to say. So shall I hand over to you now, Maria, to do your thing?
Yeah, that's fine. So, okay, I'm going to share my screen. I've just got a couple of slides to share briefly, because I think there's people on here that I haven't met before. So I thought I'd just let you know sort of who I am and what I'm about. So yeah, Hayley asked me to do this today about the help getting paid. And I've definitely seen that with my clients as well. And we've had that with a couple of the, well, a few people in the different coaching groups as well. So this is the second cohort that we've had. I think we've got somebody else in the waiting room to come in as well. So yeah, just a little bit of background about me. So I'm founder of Construction Coach. I am a chartered quantity surveyor by profession. So I've been in the industry since I was 16. I did a BTEC in building studies many years ago. And then I went on to become a quantity surveyor and a project manager as well. And I think around about the time of the recession in sort of 2008, 2009, I was working as a project manager. And I think I just really noticed the impact that recession was having, lack of cash flow. We have these like boom and bust cycles in our industry, and also the impact that, you know, fear can have on people's behaviors. And I felt that I was under a lot of pressure to be somebody that I wasn't. I felt like I was actually under pressure to drive costs down, and I just didn't like who I felt like I had to be in that situation. And I just thought we really need to be better at doing business And I think me having coaching made a massive impact as well, because I realized that my number one value is fairness. And so when I was being treated unfairly, or I was seeing people around me being treated unfairly, that really had an impact on me. And that's really what's driven me to do what I do now. And then over the years, I've found a niche working with SMEs and micro businesses, and in recent years, small builders specifically. And yeah, so I'm really enjoying working with the FMB, working with the businesses, and really sort of finding what the common themes are with businesses, or with the FMB businesses. I feel like I've really got a good grasp on that. And yeah, and also the way that I work is a bit different. So the way that I run the coaching program is a bit different. It's not the kind of delivering the PowerPoints and, just giving lots of information. It is very interactive, because I think community and learning from each other plays a really powerful role, and also saves a lot of time, because if somebody has experienced something and they can then give that knowledge to you, I think that is a really powerful thing. So in this session, and the reason why I said about making it interactive is I think it's really good to understand what your experiences are with getting paid, what's happened, what's been going on for you. And then let's look at, how do you make sure this doesn't happen again? So what should be put in place? And does anyone have any knowledge to share from their experiences as well? So let's sort of work through this. And then I would, Hayley's going to be going through what FMB resources are available to support you. And then let's think about, are there any gaps? Because I think it's always good to, if there are any gaps, there might be more resources that could be created. So as Hayley said, this is definitely going to be an interactive session, and hopefully Neil, who's driving in his van, will be able to be safe on this call. So I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to go straight into asking you some questions on the call. So I'm going to pull up a whiteboard, a virtual whiteboard, and start to capture some information. So what are your experiences with not getting paid? Like what are the scenarios? What's happened with you? And just raise your hands if anybody would like to chip in and share their experiences. Marta, would you like to?
Yeah, so recently we were approached by a subcontractor who's running a job, and they wanted a bit of specialist work on ground source heat pumps. We carried out a site visit, invoiced, didn't get paid straight away. Apparently they said it went into their junk box, which was fine. Then they instructed us to carry out the job that needed to be done. It was a 1 day, just changing one part. And then time went by, we didn't get paid, making phone calls. Every time I called, spoke to different people, making loads of different excuses. It was only then that I did a little bit more research into the company and realized actually they're not even a limited company, just self-employed. Had a website, and the phone, like the landline, just went to people on site onto their phones. So made a few phone calls. Then I wrote an email and just said, look, we've done 2 jobs, 2 invoices. It's been, I don't know, 52 days. We need to get paid. So nothing happened. All of a sudden, he called back and said, actually, you didn't do the job properly. You didn't do it to manufacturer's guidelines. So I'm not paying you. We contacted the manufacturer, and yes, we had done it properly. So then that's when I contacted the FMB and asked for advice, sent them an email to say, I'm giving you a warning. If we're not paid within 7 days, we will be issuing a claim. So when that happened, the first invoice got paid immediately, but the second one didn't. And then when it came to the 7 days, I just said, thank you for the first invoice. If I don't receive your second payment by 5 p.m., I will be putting in a claim. And then he just said, He emailed back and said, well, we've only had an engineer come out. I'll let you know by Monday. This Monday gone, I still put in the claim online last week, Friday. So, and I haven't heard from him at all. So that's the situation.
Okay. Okay, so I guess in that scenario, what would you have done differently right from the very beginning? Because you talked about due diligence.
Yeah.
Well, you talked about like doing some research afterwards. So what do you think you would have done differently now, basically, you know?
Yeah, I believe there's some contracts within the FMB to use with subcontractors, and that's what I should have done really. I should have put something in place. But it was a £800 job. I thought it's a small job. I didn't really think, there's a big risk. I had never had any issues with other subcontractors before, so I thought it'd be fine. The trust element has to be there, I suppose, as well. But having learned from it, next time I will make sure that at least the contract is in place.
Yeah, and from what you've said, did you say that if you'd done some research, do you think if you'd done the research before you went into it, would you have gone into it still?
Probably yes, because they're still running
Yeah.
a business. Just because they're not limited doesn't mean they're dishonest. But I probably
Yeah.
would have made sure that the first invoice got paid as well before carrying out the job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And it sounds like you really took advantage of the support from the FMB as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for that. And so based on where you're at now, what more do you think needs to happen?
Well, I think if he doesn't reply, he's got until the 10th of June to make a response. And if he doesn't, then I will proceed, which is, I think, to request for a CCJ. If I can just add, a few years ago, we had an experience with a residential client who didn't want to pay. It was a long story, but we were doing the work and then we had to stop because they were refusing to pay. And again, based on FMB advice, the case actually did go to court, but they were, what should I say? I would say probably ignorant in the matter, where they didn't prepare themselves for court. Whereas I prepared everything, everything was done as it should have been done. And within 5 minutes, the judge ruled in our favor and they had to pay. So, in my experience, I know that actually the court system works. And most people are probably afraid of going through because it seems daunting. But actually, it's straightforward. And if you've got records and dates and everything else, then it's just the length of time it takes and the annoyance of having to do it. But it works.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for that. Okay, brilliant. And we'll revisit a few of these things as well as we go. But yeah, has anybody else got any experiences of not getting paid? Like what's happened? What are the different scenarios that you've experienced? Or are you aware of any other scenarios that you feel that we need to work through?
I can mention a couple, Maria, that we have had go through the dispute resolution process recently,
Yeah.
where the customer towards the end of the project makes up, or not makes up, exaggerates problems that they might have with the job that are basically snagging issues at the end of the job. And they use those as the basis for not paying the final bill. And it's a way of sort of dragging things out. And what we find is that some members just say, as Marta was just saying, they think, oh, I don't want to get involved in litigation or the expense or the time or whatever, so I'll just put it down to experience and write it off, which always seems a shame because they're entitled to that money, and it's sort of eating into their profit margins, isn't it? So I think that what Marta was just saying about, the court system can work in your favor if you decide to put some time into doing it and then utilize the FMB's resources and advice, then you can get that money back if there's no legitimate basis for withholding it. So we are seeing that quite a bit.
Yeah. So yeah, I've been thinking about this one because I've seen this one a few times. One of my clients is struggling to get retention back. They've handed over, but the level of snags that the client's coming up with are just way beyond really what's acceptable. So I wanted to run through a few things, and I wanted to kind of, you know, come up with what should that sort of process be right from the very beginning. So to avoid late payments, like what would that, if you got everything in place that you needed to get in place, what would that look like? And I'm going to sort of rely on people to contribute. So I guess first of all, my question is, do you do due diligence on your clients? Like, do people has anybody ever sort of Googled like their clients or anything like that? Or have you ever had a gut feel? So if a project's gone wrong, did you have a gut feel right at the very beginning? There's something not quite right here. I don't think they're gonna pay, or has anything like that ever come up before? So that I'm guessing that's a no. So, but do you think it is a good idea to do sort of due diligence on your clients at the beginning? Is this something that you've ever thought of?
Yeah. Sorry, I was just muted.
Oh,
We had a client a while ago. Just after COVID it was, and we thought he was playing about before we even started the job, you know, and kind of thought we needed the work, so we started the job, got going, and it was a garage, just a small garage build, and we got it built, got the roof on, and then he started wanting extra drainage put in and such like, which we did, and but it was an extra cost, and then he didn't want to pay for the extra drains, so we ended up went through the whole dispute process and what have you. We ended up in court with him, and it was just when you say about trusting your gut, we should have known. We had a gut feeling at the start, but we carried on with it, and ended up in court with him. So it didn't go in our favour either, which unfortunately. So
all right.
Yeah.
What did they say? Like, why? How come it didn't go in your?
Because, well, at the very end, the judge said that we hadn't got the invoices at the correct times and such like, and so our paperwork wasn't quite right, and ended up, even though we had the F&B contract, and the F&B backed us and said, you know, spoke to the client and said we had to pay us for the extra drainage, but in the end, the judge awarded the extra drainage to us, but he counterclaimed, and then we had to pay him for the rest of the project. So it ended up costing us about £8,000. So it's a bit of a kick in the guts, really. But we should have trusted our gut in the start, as you say, really.
Yeah.
But,
so what was off then? So what made you think that what
he was just changing things after the sort of price had been agreed, and then he was coming up with different things, and he was just a little bit funny, you know. He was just a strange chap, really. And then he seemed all right once we got started, but then the lads went to start some of the paths that we were to do, and he came up with a far more elaborate drawing than what had been agreed to start with and such like. And so I think he'd just been scheming from the start, really, is what we thought. But then we found out after the builder who'd been there before us had had trouble as well. So so due diligence would have probably been a good one on that, I think, if there was a way of checking.
Yeah.
But
Maria, I was thinking that about what Richard was just saying about a way of checking, because if your customer is a a commercial entity or another business, you can do credit checks on a company quite easily, can't you? But it's not so easy when it's a domestic consumer. So do you know of any sort of background checks that members could be doing when they're, other than relying on their gut instinct about the customer, like Richard was saying, you know, he had that feeling about him being a difficult person to deal with. But you don't always get that feeling before you start the work, do you? Sometimes things go wrong towards the end.
That's right. I mean, it's interesting to see what like Google would come up with, you know, whether people might have posted on forums, you know, if somebody's had a problem with the client or if somebody's like a serial non-peer. I mean, I actually had a look on, there was an article that Checker Trade actually produced, and one of the things that they did suggest was about Googling them, like doing a bit of due diligence on a client and,
Yeah.
you know, see if anything's come up.
Yeah. And what we
The buildings have said.
Yeah, we've found with some clients who are going through the dispute resolution process where they're withholding payment and being, you know, not entirely reasonable. Sometimes if you look at those clients, say on Trustpilot or in Google reviews, and look at the reviews that they've posted on other businesses, and when they've got negative review after negative review of lots of different services, builders included, that's maybe a warning sign that that's not a customer that it's possible to satisfy. But we
Yeah.
have seen that, yeah. But it's
Yeah.
all takes time, doesn't it? You shouldn't have to do all of this detective work just to do a decent job, but you know, maybe it is necessary.
Yeah, and I mean, I think also it's interesting what you said, Richard, about like when you're feeling like, oh well, like you need the work, and I think everybody's in that position at times, aren't they? Like if, because cash flow does go like that, you know, you've got the ups and downs, and sometimes, you know, you sort of, your head can overrule your heart almost. It's like, well, you know, we needed the work, so we did it, and sometimes that's when things can go wrong, I guess. But I think trusting your gut is really good. But I think doing the due diligence as a starting point is definitely something to think about. You know, when people, if they have complained a lot, like Hayley says on other projects, sometimes those alarm bells can go off, I think. Yeah. So, and how, I did have a question and it's completely gone out of my mind. Yeah, so I said about the due diligence, you know, having that gut feel in the first place. How are you actually like contracting with your clients? So, what are you, yeah, that was what I was thinking about. I was having a look at the F&B contract beforehand, like the simple form of contract, and I'd be interested to know, how are you actually contracting with your clients? What forms of contract are you using? What sort of things is it saying in there about quality and standard of workmanship? If anybody would like to share what they're doing. Because I guess the debate, sorry, Richard, did you want to share?
I was just going to say we just use the simple form contract generally, because there's not a lot of info in it. It's quite straightforward, and it basically just sets out the payment dates and when you're going to start and such like. And so yeah, it's nice and simple. Everybody can understand it. You know, the clients as well. So it just lets everybody kind of know where they're at. So we just use that really.
Yeah. And is that's the one that's on the F&B website, is that right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things I wanted to talk about was, how do you define reasonable skill and care? Because that's one of the things that's in the contract. It talks about reasonable skill and care. So I guess my question to you on the call and people who are sort of watching the replay is, how do you do you sort of clarify with your clients what level of quality to expect? So do you know when we were saying how at the end of a project, if a client's getting really picky, well, I wasn't expecting this and I'm not happy with this quality here. So to avoid that, how do you make it clear to your clients what level of quality to expect from you? Marta, would you like to say?
Yeah, well, I think being members of the Federation, they expect high quality, and we do say we will deliver that. The first domestic case that I had a few years ago, it was before I joined the FMB, and I only had a very simple sort of 2-page contract, which I had drafted myself, and that stood in court, and it was enough. But what we did do was we always specify the different steps of the work that we're providing, and we actually put it in order. So when we went to court with that piece of paper, I was able to tick off everything that we had done and then just estimate what percentage of the work had not been done in order to sort of tell the judge how much we should get paid. And we do that still. So whenever we're going into a job, if there was ever to be any issues, it would be sort of in the order that you're doing the work and everything sort of in different steps. And what we do as well is we take photos throughout the project, or even videos, because then we've got the evidence. Yeah, we've done that. That's what we said we would do, and we did do it. So anything, and we do also, when we give out a quote, we put a note on there. Anything which is not specified within this is not included. And if there are any changes before we do it, we tell them and we create a new sort of quote, and they have to agree to it in writing, to avoid the issues that Richard unfortunately had to face, where he did the extra work and didn't get paid. And my other half, who's actually on site, you know, he's got a good heart and he just wants to help people. And every day he comes home, okay, so what happened? And then, oh, we're going to have to do that. And I check, because he doesn't think like that. He just wants to get the work done. And I said, well, you can't carry on. And then I send the emails out. And sometimes people don't like it. They like dealing with the builder. Oh, can you just do this for me? And the builder will be like, yeah, it's fine. Whereas I go in from a different perspective, or even where they want something done, and from his professional point of view, he says, actually, that's dangerous. We shouldn't do that. And then I will put it in writing and say, can you just confirm that, from our professional standpoint, we don't advise you to do this. However, you will take responsibility if that's what you want done. We will do it, but you can't come back and sort of, I've got a different brain. I've worked in legal, so then I see things as a prevention. So it's like you just have to protect yourself all the time to avoid these things happening. Although I made the same mistake recently and didn't protect myself, but there you go.
Yeah, but it sounds like that was a different scenario, wasn't it?
Yeah, because it was business to business. So you don't expect you don't expect another business to not want to pay you for no apparent reason.
Yeah, no, I get that 100%. Yeah, I mean that's really good. How do you set the expectations with the clients of like what the quality is going to be, what it's going to look like, what the standard is going to be, so that you avoid a discrepancy or a difference of opinion at the end of a project? Has anybody got any thoughts on that? Or has anybody ever been in the situation where
I'll come in here. What we tend to do is there is an expectation if you're going to do a good job. All of us will have come across people who will try to squirm or try to find fault where there isn't fault. And whether it's an NHBC job or not, we will use the NHBC standards as a yardstick. So we'll happily bring in the standards, and somebody's shining a light on a paintwork or on a piece of glass, or trying to find a scratch, and it's there in the morning and it's whatever else. NHBC standards says if you can't see it from 2 meters outside of direct sunlight, it doesn't exist. Show it in black and white and just inform them, look, if we really go to court, in the NHBC standards will be the overriding guide. And it kind of sets a standard, but you don't set that stall out before you start. It's only if and once in a while, and you will get people who are like that. If and once in a while it happens, we produce the NHBC standards guide, and that's a good yardstick. for any standards. Tolerances of there are always tolerances. That's my input.
Yeah, no, I really like that. So do you sort of refer to the NHBC standards when you're actually putting together the contract in the first place, or right at the very beginning?
No, it's only like reason, like you say, what is reasonable? If any law that is written is what is reasonable, you go to court with the word reasonable, and depends who the judge is on that day. But NHBC is the yardstick that is respected. So it's a good yardstick, and you don't pull it out first day. You pull it out once in every 20, once in every 50 clients. They get a little bit antsy like that. You pull out the NHBC, and you just politely say, like, these are the standards, these are the tolerances that we have to work within. It soon disappears very, very quickly. And if they do have a genuine case, then that's fine. Yeah, you deal with it. You change the glass. You do whatever bits you have to do. But we'll all come across clients who are pedantic and try to use tiny little things to stop paying. So that's been our method, and it seems to work. We just use it as a yardstick. You only have to produce it once in a while.
Yeah. No, I'm just wondering if it might be worth considering, is a preventative message in the future. If people thought about, referencing the NHBC guidance, or do you talk about that in the on the website, Hayley? I think, is that referenced in the documents that the FMB have?
No, it isn't, because I think you have to be registered with NHBC to have access to those standards documents. Probably Mark could confirm if that's...
Yeah, though maybe that is why, but you can't buy them.
Yeah.
It's like an old phone book size of standards, and you can look through it, everything from decorating, plastering, and painting, and everything. All the standards from traditional construction, timber frame construction, all the standards are there.
Yeah.
Okay, because one of the things that I've mentioned to clients before and talked with them about is almost having like showing them another job, for example, to give an idea of what the standard of quality is that you produce. But also, if people ever thought about doing something like a document or a book that actually shows like the level of detail that they can expect, because I think, there might be sort of various details that might cause problems on some projects, and if people can see a visual, or they can understand what level of quality they're going to get right from the very beginning, and that's what level that you produce, then I suppose that's a potential way of nipping things in the bud right from the outset.
Yeah, I guess it doesn't deal with those clients who just are literally unreasonable.
No, that's true.
Yeah.
The word that has been put on them in the last few years are Karens. Didn't used to be Karens, but they're now Karens of the world. They're there. Guys, I'm sorry, I'm really going to have to bolt. I have my daughter to pick up. So
okay.
Thank you, and I'm sorry, I'm going to have to run on.
Thanks for joining.
Okay, thanks. Bye all.
Yeah. Okay. The other thing I wanted to ask is, do people take record photographs right at the very beginning? So when you are going to be working on an existing property and you're going to be sort of connecting into it or whatever, do people take those record photographs so that they're not being accused of anything right at the end, like any damage and that kind of thing?
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
Beginning, throughout the whole project, and at the end, even videos, everything.
Yeah. Okay. And in your, presumably in your terms and conditions, then you have all of your like preferred payment methods. You've agreed the scope of works, and you've got all the deadlines, and you talk about like late payments and things like that. Is that right?
I think most of it is covered under the FMB contract.
Yeah.
But we do set the dates, and what I do now is on those dates, I send them an invoice as a reminder.
Yeah.
Because those dates are payment dates. It's not like invoice date and then 30 days.
Yeah.
So, and then if they don't pay within 2-3 days, I'll just give them a call or email again.
So we just revised the FMB contracts, and one of the changes that we've made, although it's not published on the website yet because the solicitors are just giving it the final once over, but one of the changes we're making is to make the payment dates variable so that you can ask for payment within 7 days if that's your preference. It doesn't have to be. Previously, they just all said 14 days, but you can vary that to say 7 days if you want to. And we did a webinar about a month ago with an accountant who was talking about managing cash flow, and she was advising that it's best to have really short stage payments so that you don't get too far ahead of in terms of the work that you've done and the payment that you're owed. So even if that means having a stage payment and an invoice every 2 weeks or something like that to keep on top of it. So we've increased the number of stage payments that you can enter into the contract as well for that reason, to help members with that. I guess it makes it, there's more work because you've got to keep on top of it all the time, but it would mean that if a payment was missed, you're owed less money if that situation arises. So that's something that we've put into the contract as well. And it also talks about, if payments are late, that you can charge interest on the overdue amounts as well. Although I don't think members ever do that, but at least if the customer has seen it in there, they know that it's a possibility that that might happen. So it tends to encourage payment to happen. But yeah, it's worth getting it set up in the contract with the right terms and conditions initially, so that if something does go wrong, then you've got that in your back pocket to be able to follow up on, isn't it? Because we do hear as well from the advisors on the legal helpline that a lot of members that call them because their payment's overdue, they haven't really been chasing up the payments regularly. They might have left it for quite a long time before they realise, that invoice never got paid, and I think maybe customers take advantage of that. So yeah, having a process in place that you chase them up after, I don't know, 14 days, and then another week goes by and chase them again, etc. Because a lot of clients will just think, well, if they're not chasing me, I'll just leave it and see what happens. So that's what we're hearing from members as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've worked with a client in the past who it was almost a year and they hadn't submitted their final account. So yeah, but I think they'd had some challenges with their quantity surveyor,
Right.
Getting information in and things like that. So yeah, I mean, I guess just to recap then, from a preventative measure, thinking about the due diligence side of things, seeing if anything's coming up on these clients, trusting your gut as well if you don't think that they are the right fit, if you're getting sort of those warning signs right from the very beginning, making it clear from the start what level of quality they should expect, like on the project, and also taking photos and videos right from the get-go if it's a remodel and it's going to impact on existing structure, to avoid those difficult conversations at the end. And also making sure that you've got the form of contract in place, you've got the clarity on payments, etc., that you are chasing up those payments regularly. And I think having a really clear process for variations is what we've said. Make sure that you are sticking to timescales as well, because it sounds like what you were saying, Richard, I think not sticking to timescales that ruled against you or something. Is that right?
Yeah, I think it was the invoicing hadn't been done correctly. So that was the thing that the judge said sort of broke the contract, apparently. So he ruled in the client's favour. And we ended up having to pay him for the remainder of the job that wasn't complete. So it was a bit of a double whammy, really.
That's a bitter pill to swallow.
It was, but you live and learn, don't you?
Yeah.
But
yeah. It's a tough one though.
It was. It was a sad day.
Yeah, I'll bet. But I mean, have you put like the processes and everything in place now to?
We're trying to, yeah. We're trying to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I think, doing what you said you're going to do, sticking to the timescales, having that audit trail, I think is so important. And if things do go wrong, having that audit trail to be able to back everything up. And it sounds like, Marty, you've experienced that and you were able to produce information, I think, which is really good. So I think all of those things can help you avoid things from happening in the first place. And Hayley, what about the process, just clarifying the process of like when things start to go wrong? So if somebody is having that dispute, like what's available, what is the process?
So that all of the FMB suite of contracts focus on if there's differences between the builder and the client, the first line of approach is to try and sort it out amicably, which obviously everybody would prefer, and it's quicker and easier to do that. So that's the first stop. But if that fails, then we have got on the members area of the FMB website, there's a helpline for legal advice on there. They will just give you advice over the phone. They won't actually take any legal action or review documents or anything for you, but it can be quite useful just to actually frame what the problem is by having that discussion with a legal advisor, and that will help you with next steps. And then in the document library that we've also got on the members area of the website, there's a legal library with a whole bunch of checklists that can help you. There's one checklist that's specifically about preventing bad debts and preventing this situation from arising, which might be worth going through just to make sure you've taken all of those steps. There's also different approaches to chasing someone who's a slow payer or someone who's not paying at all, and all of that is set out in some documents in the document library, together with some template things like a letter before action. And also something that they suggest is if the client is not paying because they haven't got the money, basically try agreeing an installment plan with them, and there's a template agreement for that in the document library as well. So that could be an option if they're being transparent about that and saying they've just, something's happened in their lives, perhaps they've lost a job or whatever, and then they just don't have the money to pay it. So it's about sort of finding some kind of solution that helps everybody to move forward. And then if it's not able to be resolved in that way, we've also got some solicitors in the FMB. They're listed in the supplier directory and on the legal and debt recovery information piece on the members area as well. And they can then, if you have a discussion with them, they can do, take it on to the next stage, like advise you about potentially taking the client to court or whatever. But all of the advice is about trying to avoid having to do that if you possibly can, because, it can work for you, but it can also take up a lot of time as well. So those are the kinds of resources that we've got around the initial setting up of the contract using the FMB suite of contracts and advice on that. And then also if things do go wrong, the information in the document library can be helpful as well, especially those template letters and that kind of thing. So yeah, but we know it's not easy. And if all of if you want to try a different approach, you can even get the client to lodge a dispute case with us, and then our dispute resolution service will try and mediate between both parties. And the aim of that is to reach a compromise agreement, which might be an payment by installments, or sometimes we get situations of things like, well, the member won't go back to finish off some snagging until this final bill has been paid, and the client won't pay the bill until the snagging's been finished. So you get a bit of a standoff situation. But by having an independent third party trying to discuss with both parties, look, let's find a way out of this and find a solution, that can often be the thing that moves things forward a little bit. So yeah, that service is available to you as members. If you want to access it, you can contact the dispute resolution team and they'll send you something called a deadlock pack, where it's a letter that goes to the client explaining the service that the FMB offers and how it can help them. So all of those services are quite well used. And like I said, we are seeing increasingly the members are using the service because they're struggling to get paid by their clients at the end of the day. And clients are getting more and more inclined to withhold payments. So it's tough, isn't it? And so we're doing whatever we can to help. And I don't know if there's anything that anybody on the call thinks that FMB could be doing that we don't have a service for. Any suggestions about that, we're always happy to listen to that, as Maria said earlier, because if there are any gaps in the service that we've got, we need to know about that. I personally, I think one of the things that members might struggle with is there is a lot of help there, but it's quite hard to get your head around which route do you go down. Is it best to call the legal helpline? Is it best to use the mediation service or go straight to a solicitor? So, you can always call one of the team to have a chat about what's available.
I know that when I was working as a quantity surveyor, in the JCT form of contracts, which is what I tended to use most, they do talk about like adjudication, sort of mediation as being like a first point of contact, a first point, trying to sort of get that mediation before you start going down the sort of the solicitors and the legal, the major legal routes and that kind of thing.
Yeah, because our service is sort of informal mediation, so it's over the phone.
Yeah.
It's not with both parties at once. It's the mediators will speak to one party and then the other party and try and find some common ground between the two. So that can be quite a helpful thing. And they do manage. It's about half the cases we manage to find a solution for, which I think is pretty good considering that usually both parties are miles apart when they come into the process. So the fact that we get about half of them resolved, I think, is quite good. It'd be nice if it was more than that, but sometimes it's not possible.
Yeah. And is there any because what might be useful, is there any record of like when things have been resolved, what sort of outcomes there's been, so that people can understand like what could be done to prevent things from happening in the first place, is something I'm just thinking about off the top of my head.
Okay, I see what you mean. So you mean like taking the content of those cases and using it as a learning opportunity, really, to say this is what went wrong in these cases. And we could certainly do more of that, actually, because we've got different communication channels. Like we could put things in Master Builder magazine about case studies from the dispute process and what's gone wrong initially and then what the outcome was. And we do have to capture all of that because our service is audited and certified by the Chartered Trading Standards Institute, and they ask us for all that kind of data about causes and resolutions and how long it takes to resolve them and that kind of thing. So we do have a lot of that data. So maybe, we could share more of that with members as a sort of way of learning from what's gone wrong for other members. Yeah,
definitely. Because I think, then people could put processes in place and make sure that they're doing absolutely everything they can to avoid that happening on their projects.
Yeah.
The other thing to think about as well is, I think it is that it's how do you build rapport with your clients in the first place? I mean, some of them will be, it sounds like from the beginning they could be completely awkward and they're just not people that you want to have as clients, because nothing that you do is ever going to be satisfactory. But sometimes I think it is about understanding your clients, understanding their communication preferences and things like that as well. So like one of the things we cover in the coaching program, like this month, we've been looking specifically at people and skills. And one of the things we've looked at is the concept of personality profiling. So like just understanding different people's personalities. And I don't know if you've ever heard of something like the DISC profile, where you've got like the different colours. So you've got red, yellow, blue, green. And sometimes, and that can sort of impact on how you communicate with people. So if your client is like really detail focused, they want to know everything, then obviously how you communicate with them is really important to them. So they will want to know like the finite detail. If you're not giving them enough information, that could sort of impact on the relationship that you have with your client. So I think it's really, it's good to understand right from the very beginning, what their communication preferences are, what their understanding is of what you're going to deliver, quality, having those regular update meetings as well to keep them informed, communicating how they want to be communicated, just trying to do as much as you can to sort of manage their expectations and give them that customer experience that they're after, I guess. I think that's something to
Hello,
think
Maria.
about. Hi,
Neil Booth
Neil.
here. Hello, sorry, I was driving on the way here, but we've just come from the FMB today. We went down there to do our CSCS Black Card with Esteem training. And
Oh,
something
good.
that came up was about doing a SWOT analysis. And that was quite important because we said if you actually did that SWOT analysis with your client, maybe you could also get them to do a Belbin report on them to see what type of characters they are, and see how
Yeah.
willingness they are as a client's journey, and then incorporate your style of risk management and risk registers. So we've been through the processes of having quite a few clients been rather difficult in the last 25 years, and they never get any better. And I think it's managing and having processes to manage and put boundaries around your clients so
You just muted yourself, Neil. Oh,
that's quite a good way of sort of like trying to group it all together, sort of summarize it. What do you do? And I think being in fear of a client or are they going to pay? It's already put in a process of making a steady stage payment so that you know that you've got the right communication from the outset.
yeah. Do you think as well, Maria, that and this is a subject for another day because we're already nearly at 5:30, but the role of technology in all of this and using like project management apps where you can have that change management, make that process more easy to manage changes in the contract as you go through. But we'll have to do a separate webinar on that, I think. It's a whole new
Yeah,
topic.
100%. Yeah, 100%. I mean, I've technology, as you know, is something that we're looking into. We're looking into like a program to help builders get more tech into their business. But project management tools, I think, are proven to be really successful. So I had a demonstration with one of the people that was on the coaching program last year. They use Buildertrend, and I know there are other ones out there as well. But they showed me like their sort of platform, and it's got like the whole area for client and client communication, and like everything's all on one dashboard so that they can manage variations on there. It can manage client communication if they need to get things signed off. And I think the other thing to take into consideration is obviously the program, having that robust program in place and having key milestones and key dates for decisions from clients as well, because that's when things can go wrong if you want clients to pick something and they're not picking things in time, and it's delaying things. I think it's having that robust like project management process and that communication that's clearly visible to the client, I think is really, really good. So yeah, I definitely say that is really important to have that tool in place.
Right.
It's like a solid CRM process, isn't it? That's what the Dennis Weeks of the world has with Buildertrend.
Yes. Yeah. And there are others, and that's one of the things that we are going to be exploring on this program that we do, is different project management tools. But yeah, so I think we're about at time. So yeah, it has been a a different type of session today, and thanks everybody for contributing. And I think, you know, other
Thank
people
you.
will be able to learn from, you know, what we've picked up on. We've talked about a process to avoid no payments. We've talked about the importance of having the right client communication. We've heard some scenarios of what happened when people haven't paid. And we've also heard, you know, the procedures that the FMB have got in place to support you, which is great. And also we've talked about the concept of using the data from what other people have experienced with the mediators and the solicitors and the when people have gone down those routes, to be able to see case studies and learn from other people's experiences as well. So I think using that data moving forwards will be really useful. So yeah, so I think that
Thank
certainly
you.
it from me.
That's great, thank you. And like I said at the beginning, we will send you a follow-up email, and we'll put a link to the recording of this, and I'll put the helpline numbers and things in there as well for people. But thank you all so much for joining us, for beginning your bank holiday weekend with us on a Friday afternoon. And I hope you all have a lovely break from work, although up here in Yorkshire, it's going to rain the entire weekend, which is a bit miserable, but there you go. Anyway, typical British bank holiday weather. Yeah, thanks again for joining us today. I hope you found it useful, and we'll send you the follow-up email probably after the weekend, so next Tuesday. And thanks, Maria, as well. That's been really
Thank you very much,
Okay.
ladies. Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Hayley.
Thank you. Good to see you, Neil.
Have a good weekend. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.